member of the Oral Committee. He's also a lawyer. He's a prominent Ghanaian lawyer, even though he hates to hear it said. Martin Kpebu is our guest this morning. Good morning, sir.
Hi, good morning, Kojo. Good morning. Hey,
yeah.
Let me repeat yesterday's thank you to Joy FMO. Let's keep, motivating you guys to do the right thing for our democracy. So, Kojo, Winston, Raymond Akwa, Samson Ladia, Yenini, Sami Odame, and all your crew. Once again, thank you. Thank you very much for protecting our democracy from the marauding politicians. The way Akufo-Addo sought to destroy our democracy, we should never entertain a president like that in Ghana. Okay? So thank you once again.
We appreciate it, Martin. Thanks very much. All right. So the report has finally been handed over to the president for the next stage of this to happen. 38 issues or
36
cases, 36 cases, forgive me, 36 cases to be considered. And the expectation that we could recover over $21 billion. First of all, maybe you can help us understand how, a bit of your process as a team. What were the criteria with which you shortlisted these 36 cases?
So basically, we're looking at one, in terms of the quantum of money involved. A lot of them are quite big ticket cases, right? So that was quite a huge criteria or criterion, singular, right? Yeah. And then also you look at the material, the availability of material, or let's say ordinarily evidence to support the cases. So these are ones that we could easily find materials to be able to put together to serve as a building block, to serve as a foundation for the Attorney General to build on. So let's say you look at National Cathedral. You see that you find a lot of information on National Cathedral. $58 million spent on a pit, right? The biggest pit, I'm sure, for such an amount of money. Or turn the sentence around. This is a pit that we feel we've been hugely shortchanged. So, with citizens having petitioned that case should be looked into, we took the petition, then we gathered some of the materials publicly available on it. Then, so now that has been handed over to the Attorney General, it's for him to then go in and do full-scale investigations on it, right? So,
Okay, so was the practicality of retrieval one of the criteria? I mean, did you look at whether or not in some of these cases it will even be possible to retrieve the money? For example, the Bank of Ghana money printing. How did you envisage that money can be retrieved?
Good. So, Kojo, one thing I've learned as a lawyer is that you never know tomorrow. You never know what public opinion can do. So I'm not one to shoot down cases to say that this is not practicable. I'll give you one short example and leave it at that. About 5, 6 years ago, we started a case on the Tiwa forest. You see, the previous regime wanted to mine bauxite in the Tiwa forest. The average even law student will tell you that, look, you can't win this case against government. We need to develop X, Y, Z. Yet I took this case on. I even lost my job. The law firm I was working at, I had to leave because I was taking on the government. Kojo, today, you are a champion of mining, a champion against mining in forest. See the huge work, Joe FM, you've been doing, eventually culminating in the acceptance by both NDC and MPP to repeal the mining in forest LI. So all I'm saying one word is that a case that 5, 6 years ago looked impossible to win. Everybody say, are you delusional? Kpebu, are you delusional? Can you stop a government from mining in the Tiwa forest when we need development. But today, you see how public opinion has moved. We are against mining in forests. We've seen that we can find jobs in other areas. So that's the same attitude I have about this printing of money. You let the public debate it. As we move on, you'll be surprised at things that can happen. That's what I'll say about it.
Well, in this case, I think you probably have public sentiment on your side. People really want to see loot recovered. I haven't come across anybody who has said it is bad to recover loot. So you already have the public sentiment. Now we're looking at the practicality of it. If that money is described as loot, how do we recover it?
So simply, you would, or maybe, well, let me remove the word simple. There's nothing that simple in life like that. You would look at what was he used for. You know how we berated Governor Addison, that he was too weak. He couldn't stand up to Akufo-Addo, of course, because they gave him a job and, security of tenure, all those things were at stake. So he just simply printed for them. What was the money used for? So when we trace and see what kind of contracts that money was used to finance, all the transactions that were involved, then you begin to ask those persons. And especially where you find that those monies were not used well. So that's it. You want to recover causing financial loss.
Now, you introduced a bit about causing financial loss, but you also say, in case we find that the money was not used properly, is it an indication? Because you say these are cases that you've reviewed in detail. So what did your detailed review show you or tell you about the usage of those funds?
Good. So, our mandate was basically to receive the petitions, complaints, tips, queues, etc. Then secondly, to gather evidence that's publicly available. So what you find is that we were limited in scope. We didn't do forensic audit. We had no such mandate. But what it is that we took evidence, or call it information, in the public domain. So when you put those information together, you know how the previous regime was very wasteful. One day, one scandal, etc. So they all feed into a general pattern of waste. So that is what gives the opinion that, look, then let's drill deeper to do a forensic audit, right? Transaction by transaction, and hopefully we'll be able to find a lot of wrongdoing. And then based upon that, we would ask that the money be recovered.
Maybe let's separate the issue. First, is your target the central bank and the people that made the decision in the first place to pump their amount of money into the economy? Or your target is the eventual recipient of the money and what they used it for? When you were determining that this 60 billion ought to be on the list of cases that are important to you?
Raymond, we had no specific target. Our mandate, as I said, was to receive petitions and also gather evidence that's publicly available, arrange them to make it easier for the Attorney General to build on. So we weren't targeting specific people. As long as we saw anything that quacked like a duck, looked like one, then we thought it was one. So we would put it in.
And
so
even on the face of it, forgive me, but even on the face of it, one would expect, mindful of your competence, that you just take any crime that you think fits the bill, look at the elements within the crime, and say, this may very well be a suspicion of this happening. Which crimes come up easily to you when you looked at the 60 billion? And of course, you're not the only lawyer on that panel. Kpebu is also a lawyer. So the presumption is that you had actually done some preliminary or face value examination of it, right?
Yes. So causing financial loss. Yes. The moment you see that government is borrowing willy-nilly from central bank, and we don't seem to see what the money is being used for, right? And yet, in the meantime, a huge debt is being created. The lawyer's mind will go to causing financial loss. And
So-
when it's causing financial loss, you are looking at not only retrieving or recovering the money, but also holding those persons who did that accountable. So Governor Addison will have questions to answer. And I'm sure he well knows it, because that was made clear to him that the Ghanaian people asked him questions when these things were going on. And I'm sure he knows that that's not the end of the matter.
Except that it wasn't Governor Addison that eventually spent the money. Or we are not clear on that too.
Oh, but we see no a conduit. You
No,
see,
I'm not
remember on
disputing
the
that.
news file
Yeah.
once made this point that if you check the time 2021, they were doing the expansionary spending after COVID or during COVID, etc. You check in America, you see Jerome Powell fighting Trump. Yeah, they were having a public row. Powell holding his ground, but here Addison was quiet. He couldn't stand up to Akufo-Addo. He just easily gave in with a ruse that the economy would collapse if he didn't do that. It's a ruse. So let's drill in and then you'll see.
Okay, now forgive me, but I'm just looking at the section 179A, causing loss, damage, or injury to property, and the 3 says any person through whose willful or malicious or fraudulent action or inaction, A, the state incurs a financial loss, B, the security of the state is endangered, commits an offense. Is that what we are looking at?
Yes.
And in
Yes.
this case, we construe that the 60 billion was lost. How?
Oh, so if you print money, you lend to government in ways that we don't think was necessary. The next is that what was that money used for? So if it turns out that the money wasn't used well, you are accountable. And besides, don't forget that in printing this money for government, etc., there was even supposed to be the part where he was supposed to go to Parliament, inform them. He didn't. So all of that raises issues of collusion, because the governor has lawyers. Didn't he look in the law that he just couldn't do that for the Akufo-Addo Bawumia administration without involving Parliament? So all those will be looked into.
Okay.
So Raymond, always
So the key
remember
is that you follow the money.
we couldn't do a forensic audit.
Okay.
So we couldn't have also left it out. No,
True.
because if we did, we would look reckless.
All
so
right.
let it be in. Now we're going to do, not we, the Attorney General will look at it and deploy the necessary resources to drill deeper.
Will you be surprised if the Attorney General comes to the conclusion that this is much ado about nothing?
I think we haven't reached that bridge yet. If
Okay.
it says it's much ado about nothing, it will be based on investigations, and we'll ask for that investigative report to also read through, and then we'll make judgment. But Raymond, like we keep saying, like as I'm celebrating you guys, Ghana has changed though. Ghana has changed. I heard yesterday that the Attorney General is coming to give reasons for the nolo prosequa and the withdrawals. Our democracy is going stronger. This last election we've changed Ghana. So Attorney General, Dr. Ayene, he taught even administrative law apart from natural resources. Ayene is not one to just come and say it's much ado about nothing. He would know that he has to also give us a report on what he found. Then we'll pour over the report, debate it, and then we'll see where the chips will fall.
Okay.
If you just joined us, we're talking to Martin Kpebu. He's a member of the Oral Committee. He's also a prominent Ghanaian lawyer, and he's helping us understand how that report, which was presented to the president yesterday, was put together, all the considerations that went into it. Now, Martin, if I've understood your explanation so far, it seems that what you're pointing to is the fact that in this example we've been discussing, the Bank of Ghana money printing, what you are saying is that it is possible for every officer who played a role in this process, either on the Bank of Ghana side or the government side, to be held accountable for their actions. So they could be prosecuted for their actions. But your team was called the Oral Team, Operation Recover or Loot. So again, my question is the loot, the $4.5 billion that was printed, can it be recovered? The money was printed, given to government, it was spent, we had inflation. Can it be recovered?
Yes, Kojo, I told you that from experience, that they always say that the life of the law, okay, is not logic, but it's one of experience. You see how you are pushing. Good. That's what we're to do. As we push, we will certainly find a way. Let's do the forensic audit. We will trace, okay, this money, where did it go? What was it used for? Then we'll see, was it properly used? For the ones that were not properly used, they are recoverable. As I mentioned, could you look at the other side? It's also not possible. We couldn't have just totally left out that case. We couldn't have, because then it would look as if, we're already clearing people when we didn't even have a mandate to what? Investigate. Remember, we didn't have a mandate to investigate, so we couldn't have done a forensic audit. People have complained that we want you to go into this case, 4.5 billion. So ours is to add it to the list. The Ghanaian people are speaking that add it, let's investigate it. So ORA was to gather all these cases, and for those that there was evidence or material in the public domain, we would extract those, then add.
Hello. Right. Let's see if we can reconnect to Martin Kpebu there. We just lost him momentarily. He's a member of the Oral Committee. He's also a Ghanaian lawyer, and he's explaining to us what went into this report. I suppose this is an interesting perspective that Martin is sharing, that really all they sought to do was pass on the viable cases that were reported to them.
He's back on.
He's back on the line. That's fantastic. Martin, thank you. Sorry for the interruption. You were saying.
So, yes, that's the point you are making. I know you have to play devil's advocate. Yes. So ours was to gather the petitions, and also for petitions that had evidence publicly available, we would print off the internet or documents that were given and arrange them neatly and told the story. So let's say National Cathedral. Then you say day one, Akufo-Addo said, it's private sector led. Day two, then the script changed. He gave government land. Day three, it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, if it's just land, it's okay. You can be a secular state and still give land and not be unconstitutional. Then day four, Akufo-Addo now takes public funds and pumps in, attached at the exhibits. Then day five. So you see, that's what we did. Okay. So when the Attorney General take the case, at least we've written for him. A simple petition came in, and then we took it and looked for the publicly available information, blah, 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 and put them together neatly. So he reads that, it's well arranged. Then he drills down to now go in further. So that's what we did. We didn't have the mandate to invite anybody to ask questions, to request documents from public institutions or private institutions. No, that wasn't the mandate. That's phase one. And Kojo, it was a master stroke because remember, people were getting despondent. Corruption was one of the major factors for Bawumia's loss because he didn't look credible. He was part of the Akufo-Addo regime, blah, blah, blah. So people started inundating JM with complaints of corruption, and he couldn't have sat down for 1 full month before working. So he said, okay, let me gather Kpebu, Domlevo, and Co. Start, receive the complaints, arrange them, begin to look into the story, and write reports on that, so that when the Attorney General takes it, he can build on that. So that's what we simply did. At least with my practice as a lawyer, if you ask some of these things, you are saying, I know how to ask experts to do forensic audit, etc. But that wasn't our mandate. We couldn't have asked for a forensic audit.
All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the land, the state lands that were reviewed. The value assigned by Oral Team is about 702.8 million US dollars worth of land that you reviewed. This is a very substantial amount. Help us understand. Again, I'm so glad that it's you we're talking to because of your legal background. So currently in Ghana, there is no actual law against buying state land or against the state selling land. So in these cases where you have identified individuals who have purchased state land, some of them politicians, some of them politically exposed persons, who have bought state land, in some cases very, very cheap. What exactly is the illegality based upon which we can recover these lands?
So in law, number one, you can hear of unconscionability. So he said very cheap. Yes. Now let's give a typical example. If you go to the agric mechanization land, somebody got it for about $10,000. Yet another citizen was asked to pay $500,000. Yes, Kojo, you heard me right. The Vegetable Exporters Association were asked to pay $500,000, and yet another person, because he is politically exposed, was in government, was gifted the land $10,000. So you begin to see the problem. That okay, yes, you know the land is worth $500,000, and yet you are offering to some other people for $10,000, etc. So you can look at it from that point of view. That, and everybody knows that lands in cantonments are very, very expensive. So where you intentionally put a very small figure for government officers, and yet when it comes to private citizens, you are asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars. We can make that argument. And even before then, that's if you want to go to court. But the first thing is that and that's what we hope the president will do. He will exercise the power of eminent domain. He will call in those people, look, are you willing to pay the commercial value? If you don't, then government can take the lands back. Yeah, when government uses eminent domain, Article 20 of the Constitution, that's it. Government is taking it back, and then they will pay you what you paid. So you say you paid 162,000 Ghana. That's what I've converted to about $10,000. 162,000 Ghana. Okay, here's your money. That's fair compensation of this to you. So we take them back. And let's note this very good example. When Atta Mills came 2009, Kufuor had gifted the airport lands. You see where the Minister of Foreign Affairs sits today. Kufuor had gifted those lands to some powerful people. But Atta Mills said, no, this land is not for sale. And Atta Mills took them back. Today we have the Minister of Foreign Affairs sitting on that land. So that's an example. So the government has power in Article 20 to take back these lands. And so that's what we are imploring President Mahama to do.
Okay.
Because Akufo-Addo made nonsense of hard work. Yes, very nonsense of hard work. You can just come into government, loot all the properties and go away. You don't need to work hard.
Yes, Martin, it's an interesting point. Spectrum of what time period are we looking at? Would it, for example, go as far as those who bought the lands at Ridge 2? Would it first, in 2017, the then lands ministry had a document detailing the people who had bought lands since the 90s, which included those who acquired lands at Ridge. Some were even into acres. Some were former presidents. Were they also on your list of interest? And are they also recoverable?
Those were not on the list because I don't remember any petition that came in that form saying that go back to 93.
Okay.
But I've followed that conversation.
Yeah.
So it's the public opinion. If public opinion is very strong on it, why not? Because it's something that even Okujeto, and others, whilst we were in the opposition, they press for. But let's have a full conversation, public inquiry, commission of inquiry into all. I know lawyer Isankuma even wrote to, that's Occupy Ghana, they wrote to Abu Jinapo and pursued him endlessly for that list. and eventually Abu Jinapo swerved them. So it's time. Let's go back to it. You see, some of the conversations may not necessarily lead to recoveries, but what they do is that they strengthen our democracy. My easiest example is the 60 ministers today President Mahama has to use for his administration. This conversation started over 20 years ago. People have been railing and baying for the blood of ministers, that they are just they are leeches. They take too much from the public purse, etc. So each election cycle, people ask, isn't the number too high? Yes, once again, Akufo-Addo came and blew it beyond reason. But eventually, we got back within. And today we have 60, we are working on 60 ministers, right? So my point is that even if we don't get recovery, don't underestimate the value of the conversation. We'll be shaping public opinion, and you don't know what we will get. Look at it. Let me bring one. Okay, maybe let's move forward. The examples may be too many.
Okay, now there's a question though. Yes, before we go for the break, the Article 225 talks about a clear mandate for government in acquiring government lands. It should inherently serve the public interest or their intended purpose. In fact, clause says that if granting, if the lands are no longer of use to government, the first right of refusal should go to the landowners. Is it a basis to take back lands that did not go through this process?
It's one of them. It's one of them, right? Yes, and so, the president himself, in their manifesto, in the NDC manifesto, they made that promise that they will be doing an inquiry into these lands because there are people, my Ghana friends, they've been impoverished, but others are making millions of dollars off their lands. So it's about time we went into that in a public fashion, and then we would see where the chips will fall.
Mm-hmm. We're talking to Martin Kpebu, who is a member of the Oral Committee. He's a lawyer here in Ghana. We all know Martin. And he's explaining to us what went into the oral report, which was presented to the president yesterday. 924 emails, 1,493 phone calls, 2,417 complaints, all culminating in 36 actual cases handed over to the president and subsequently the Attorney General for action. When we come back, we'll ask Martin Kpebu what he thinks of Bright Simmons's suggestion that we are not going to get back more than 12.5% of the amount which is anticipated, some 21.9 billion US dollars. Stay with us.
Oral team and a lawyer. So, Martin, I realized that you had 2,413 cases. How many of these cases did you review?
Yeah, so 230. We reviewed 230.
And in the 230, you indicate that 36 of them alone, the amount that could be recovered amounts to 21.19 billion?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
What about the remaining 200 cases that you reviewed?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm asking, yes, what about the remaining 200 that you reviewed?
Yeah, so because of the timelines that we had, submit the report, that's why we couldn't finish estimation of those. But as the Attorney General is taking over now, I'm sure with time, they will be crunching those numbers too.
Is it a case that the 200 could lead to more money being recovered to the state? Or
absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So out of the 2,417 complaints, you reviewed 230. And you say it's basically because of time constraints, am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So out of the 230 that you reviewed, how many of them were against NDC personalities?
Wow. Could you? So we did that disaggregation.
Were there any at all?
Now, the challenge I face with that one is whether I'm allowed to start going to the details of the report beyond what has been shared.
We're okay if you don't mention any names. We just want to know the facts of it, whether there were any of these 230 cases you reviewed that were against NDC members.
Oh, but let me say this. In the scheme of things, looking at the numbers, our population, NDC, NPP, the kind of votes that they garner, it's normal to expect that it would affect people who are NDC. Yes.
So there were some of these cases against NDC people?
I said it's normal to expect, could you?
Okay.
When we get the clearance that, yes, go into details, yeah, why not? It's a report.
All right.
I just don't want to run ahead of myself.
That's fine. So with the normal expectation that out of these 230, some of them will be against NDC people, how many of the 36 that you finally presented to the president involved NDC people?
So I don't have that off head. It means that when we get clearance to go in, then I'll look at the list and then we can answer that. But rest assured, once there's a report and we've detailed out all these things, it can be done. Yes.
There were only 36 handed over to the president. Was there even one of the 36 that was against an NDC person?
Could you? Same answer, that you should expect that some would affect NDC people. Yes, it's normal because our population, generally, each one of those parties have about 45% of the voting population. So there are many. So you would find persons who are affiliated to each of those two big parties.
So we can expect to see some NDC people in the 36?
It's normal to expect that, yes. It's normal. Looking at the way our country is basically divided, about 45% for each of those two big political parties.
Right. Bright Simmons, quite interestingly, suggests that he doesn't expect that anyone can recover more than about 12.5% of the estimated $21 billion. What do you think? Having intimate knowledge of the cases you've handed over, do you agree with a 12.5% expectation?
I'm not able to agree. I'm an optimist, right? Very huge one at that. So 12.5% looks small, but we all know Bright Simmons has incredible abilities. Yeah, he does a lot of, detailed research work. He's very respected in these areas, and so, yes, he deserves some respect for what he says. But the way I'm very optimistic, I'll be sad to find that we can do only 12.5. But the reason I cannot stick out my neck to say he's wrong is that we haven't done the forensic audits and forensic investigations yet. So I have no basis to say he's totally wrong. So I'm using optimism, my sentiments. I'm hoping that we can recover a lot more because this country has bled. 12.5 looks small. But let me also quickly add that, you guys, let's also reiterate and keep hammering the fact that the benefits of ORA are not just in the fiscal recovery, right? But also its contribution to deepening our democracy. You see, for 2,417 persons to respond, and we are even still counting, it's a huge step forward. It means that we are, entrenching the attitude that see it, say it, sorted. See it, say it, sorted. Or the longer version, if you see something, say something, right? So once you get citizens responding, willing to participate in the governance, that's a huge step forward. You see how we've been bemoaning how just a few months ago were very few trying to hold the Kufuor regime accountable. That's if you leave out NDC, because they were in opposition, so we knew that there's an outsized prize to get when they come into power. But I mean, you and I, ordinary citizens who are not aligned to any political party, we're very few. So the more you see citizens participating like this, then it's heartwarming. So we see that, okay, very soon, maybe millions of our citizens who are not aligned to any political party will join in. Then we can hold the politicians accountable. Then we can change a lot of things and move our democracy forward. Because these politicians, they are our classmates. Some of them are our sons and daughters. We sit down and then they come and loot everything and we are quiet. That is what has to end. So for me, the response is a positive step that Ghanaians want to participate in our democracy, and we should make every effort to repeat it and to motivate ourselves.
So what would be your own optimistic estimation of what percentage we can hope to recover?
Could you? So hope. Okay, I like that. So I'm using hope. It's not scientific, just gut feeling. 50% wouldn't be bad. Minimum 50% wouldn't be bad.
Okay. Well, on that optimistic note, I want to say a big thank you to you for spending a big chunk of your morning with us and helping us understand the processes that went on behind the scenes to put together this report.
You're welcome.